In the 2018-2019 academic session of the African Leadership University, students of our school lived in this building called Rouge. Now, this building is on a street called KG414 in Kigali, Rwanda. And there were about 160 students, I suppose, who were staying in this place. Now, whenever school was in session, the bus had its routines that would take us to Kigali Heights, ALU's campus at the time, and bring us back according to its routes, according to its schedule. And I think every student noticed that the road leading up to Rouge was nothing to write home about. It was not in good condition, it was dilapidated. But I don't think it occurred to a lot of people that a student-led initiative to solve that problem was possible. But I thought, if Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world, well, I'm going to start today. I wanted to do something about this road, so I searched up different construction companies in Rwanda that actually make roads. And as that was going on, I thought, let's reach out to students. Let's see what kind of support we can gain from ALU admin and all of that stuff. More of what Rouge looks like from a different angle. You can see how the road appears. Back to the campaign. I reached out to several students. I wanted them to contribute monetarily for us to actually reach the goal, because of course this was going to cost money. And I reached out to Student Life. I think Student Life also reached out to me because they heard I was soliciting money from students in a way that they considered inappropriate. And that all was going on. And at the same time, I still tried to run the campaign with or without the support of the ALU administration. Of course, they gave me their full support, just not in the sense that would directly contribute to the construction of the street. But there's a lot more happening in the background, which I won't get into right now. But anyway, after many days, after several weeks of running this campaign, of talking to students, of inspiring the bodies, and of preaching to the administration, I successfully raised up 1,000 random frags, which is about $1, I think. And that was even given by my sister. I don't know if she was giving out of pity, but I had to return it to her saying, thank you, this is not quite going to get us to where we want us to go. Now we could have a whole different sermon about the various places things went wrong with this planning process. But I thought, let's not let that kill our bubble. Let's not let it pop all our hopes in one place. So I kept it up. I invited the gentleman from Strong Constructions Limited, which is the company, one of the companies I reached out to. And he came to survey the road. I showed him the whole street. I got this this picture from Google Images, and calculated the length of the roads from the main road, which was tarmac, up until Rouge was about 250 meters, sorry. And from Rouge up until the end of the street was about an extra kilometer and a half or so. And I talked with him, and he gave me some sort of a quota that we could work with the price. It all came up to $81,000. So I looked at $81,000, I looked at 1,000 random francs, which I had given back to her at this point. And I kept on nodding. I said, you know what, this is good. This is good. Thank you for this information. We're definitely going to work towards it. But before I left, he told me something. He said, you know what, you could actually meet the Ministry of Infrastructure. You could meet government officials. You could tell them what your plan is. If you are hundreds of international students living here, you could make a presentation, you could make a proposal saying you want to construct the street because you work for your education, and so on and so forth. So just making something that could come out really nicely from the whole thing. So I took it, his feedback, and I went into implementation mode. Of course, not up to a dozen students were actively in on this in terms of how we're going to build this. In fact, some of them told me, look, don't worry about it. We're leaving Rouge next year. So of course they recognize the importance of making the road. They also recognize the difficulty, I suppose, that would come with it. And why put in all this effort when we're going to leave eventually? So then thank you for your feedback. And I then continued with the project. So I sent an email to the mayor telling her about the plan, saying, you know, this is what we want to do. This is why we want to do it, and so on. And to my, oh yeah, that's more of KG414. That's the entrance. You can see how the road is a dirt road. It's not paved. And to my complete surprise, there was actually a reply. For those people who know, the country I grew up in, well, Nigeria, if you know, it's not, you don't always get the feeling that you are noticed personally by your government. And maybe that's because we're so many people, maybe because there's a lot of work to do. But it was a very unique experience because they reached out to me saying they were interested in this idea that I brought up, and I was blown away. So they offered to meet on the Tuesday, 23rd of October, right there, and in City Hall to discuss the matters. And I was just excited. I remember dressing up on the Saturday mornings to jump the motor, go all the way to City Hall. This is a picture of City Hall right there for those who know. And it was such an exciting thing because this was actually meeting with the people who would be behind running an entire city, a major city of the country. Right, so I met with the gents of the Ministry of Infrastructure. I had a couple of discussions with them. They also seemed that they were thrilled that this foreign student was so passionate about trying to implement infrastructural changes for the city. But I think one of the most outstanding conversations I had was the one with the city engineer. And he was frank with me. He told me that, oh, oops. He told me that it was a good idea. He told me that the problem was with cost and with how much it was affordable. Because there is a master plan, you see, he said, and roads are constructed according to priority. And that particular road, KG414, may not have been done until the next 5 years or even 2030, like that far into the future. He said that the reason that pace happens like that is because they do not have the financial capacity at that moment to deal with all the roads that widespread, that far reaching into the entire city. That's why they have the master plan, which shows them how to go ahead. When he said that, I mean, it was a great conversation. I was happy that we had it. His words were not wasted on me. I understood what he meant perfectly. And as I jumped on a motor to go back to the student residence, I was putting my helmet on. I just remembered the summer of 2018 when my younger brother and I and my mom were waiting for some funds so we could buy things from school, and that was an ordeal. I remember the times that I have stayed out of school for a while because of financial constraints. I remember the times that I hadn't been able to get certain opportunities or do certain things just because of cost. And here I was again witnessing this on a national level, that we also have to be kind of hindered because of cost. And when I got back to the residence, I wrote a reflection that day, and this is just a little bit of it, just a little bit of like an excerpt from the whole thing. It was about 600 words. I explained that he said the shortages in the budget mean they had to cut some roads out of the 5-year plan that they had, also the plans that they had. And I realized something, that money truly is power. I decided that the real war we have to declare is against lack. Our war is against poverty, not against people. I mean, not in the physical sense of you're attacking people, but our war is against lack. So the strategy of employing creativity and everyday thinking is how we actually grow. When it took a while, the plan was on hold. I had been wondering about it in the meantime. I had wondered about it into year 2, wondered about it into a course, one of the classes about your missions class, and I thought, well, let's go for it. Let's see, because we're talking about a challenge that's evident in the country that we're in, or wherever we think the challenge is. We can also try and work out a solution. In thinking about cheaper but more quality bricks that I could report to my government friends and my government officials that I had contacted, I considered using recyclable materials. I remember the gentleman from Strong Constructions talks about how recycled tarmac would bring the price down to about $40,000, which is over 50% deduction. So what about if we use recycled waste, like plastic bottles? Would we be able to get more quality, or would that be more affordable? So as I was shouting, Eureka, great idea, the world was shouting, Corona, go back home. So they gave us 3 days notice. 3 days notice, we had to travel back. I had to pack where I'm currently shooting this video from. But even as I entered the plane, even as I was going back, it was running in the back of my mind that this solution would have to be cost effective. This solution would have to be eco-friendly because we can benefit the environment in turn, which is a major point these days. And they would be called 414 bricks, because right there, the street is called KG414. That's how its name was born, and that was his whole idea. So in doing this, I actually discovered the idea was bigger than 414. It was larger than I had imagined, and I realized, without even getting too deep into the theories of it, we actually experience roads all the time, every day. So have you ever not been able to go somewhere because they say you're unable to, the roads are too bad for us to go there? Or have you even not wanted to go somewhere because you thought about the condition of the roads? Also thinking about how we instigate social change. Like the protest that happened in Lagos a couple of weeks ago with NSAS, roads were blocked. That shows you significance because a lot of people felt it, the economy felt it. People had to change their entire order of traveling and moving around, and even how they planned their days because of how roads were affected. Businesses, this is the roads literally connect businesses to customers, and that shows how roads could be, how was it said, the the veins through which the economy of a nation pulses. It's like the life of a country in itself, almost like the arteries, the bloodstreams of animals and human beings. From one of the seminars I had with Dr. Nkurunziza from second year, he explained to us he works with all of these people in the Ministry of Infrastructure. He actually was the one behind a couple of roads in Kigali who built them. And he told us that it takes $1 million to construct 1 kilometer of road. So imagine the government was just to pull out $1 million to construct just 80 or 90% of that path to Rouge. Now think about this. According to Rwanda Transport Development Agency, about 81% of the country's roads are unpaved. Now think about what that means if we're to construct several thousands of kilometers with $1 million. How would the government be able to afford that within a time frame that we're all going to be able to live through? And that was one real question that was on my mind. And according to this article, Rwanda is dependent on its road transport system for economic development. All major towns are connected by a road network. Furthermore, they actually are crucial to make a nation grow and develop. They provide employment, social, healthcare, and education services. They are critical in fighting against poverty. They stimulate economic and social development, and hence could be the most important of all public assets. But it might be easy to undermine its relevance sometimes. So we see how it's going to be usable because the 81% of roads are unpaved, so it will be used in the country. We see how it's desirable because this could bring a more affordable and a more quality solution to the country, and the government would definitely be interested in something that works, that looks good, that saves them a lot of cost, and people would love to reach more businesses. They'd want to set up more shops in more places and make traveling much easier. So the only question was, is this going to be feasible? And that's what I set out to find out. In prototyping, I gathered 3 different kinds of sand because the whole idea was to combine sand and plastic. Won't be able to go into all that detail just yet or right now, but I walked around the estate here and found 3 different kinds of sand: plaster, sharp, and red smooth sand. And with the plastic that we used, water sachets, which you cannot find in Rwanda, but you can find them here, and a plastic bottle. So the idea was to combine these 2 in melting pot because according to some research I had done, I had seen that this was something that was possible. The first time I tried it, that's the pot over there, it wasn't supposed to catch fire, but it did. So I tried it again because I think we had too much time and the sand, we left it for too long on the fire and the sand didn't have any effect. But the second time, it actually worked. Less time on fire and it molded really well. And I had to use these wooden sticks to arrange them, put them together. Yeah, and that's what it looked like after letting it dry. Yeah, this is what it looked like. I'm not sure you can see the one in the top right, but you can see it in other places. So we can see this worked here. So it dried in about 3 hours. Then the third experiment was with the bottle, and the bottle melted really quickly in about 5 minutes, but it also solidified very quickly. So we had to reheat it for another 4 minutes, 15 seconds, and it also mixed well. Only challenge is, I think I may have put in too much sand. This sand was sieved to make the surface look smoother, and there's a whole video about the prototyping process that I went through here. So this is what it looked like. As I was saying, I think the sand to plastic ratio may have been too much, which is why it looks a bit chunky. So we're going to come to that soon in the lessons. So the first one, about 8 centimeters, the other one, about 10. Right, so amongst a lot of learning points, one of the major ones was feasibility checks out. So we know it is possible to recycle plastics and use them to create bricks. And that right there is a picture of when I was testing it under the car wheel. That brick actually survived the test. A lot of testing that happened, but we know that the mixing ratio is crucial, as I just talked about. You can mix different kinds of sands. to have different kinds of bricks. You can also color them differently. And sieving leads to finer surfaces and drying time varies, but we can see that there's much potential with plastic bottles, as is the element we'd have in Randa anyway. So how do we scale this up? We've seen this works on a rather small scale. What can we do to make it into something bigger? And how would that work? In short, the Operation 414 model is going to be based on production and installment. Production is just when we create the bricks, assemble the materials by engaging government and non-government users. Government users because they would be the ones giving us permits, giving us licenses to operate and to also find materials like sand and so on. Non-government users because they are the ones, for instance, like particularly the ladies employed to sweep the streets of Kigali. We're targeting them for assisting in gathering materials like bottles, which would be very, very crucial in creating these bricks. Also want to create and store them, and then we'll keep track of all the bottles we're using so we know exactly how much we're contributing to the environment, how much we're saving for the government. And installment is just putting them into the tracks. We want to utilize government support there. We want to also get communities to customize how they want it to look. If they wanted to have different patterns, or if they wanted to have different colors, if they wanted to have certain appearances, they all get that freedom. And we also want to leverage Umuganda potential, which is a day in Rwanda that people come out to take care of the environment. So could it be that in addition to taking care of your environment, you're also literally creating it and making transportation movements across your streets and your area more convenient, more comfortable, more economically beneficial? The implementation strategy gets pretty long, but to simplify it, would just be to establish how much sand mixes with how much plastic, and a design for a machine that can combine these two perfectly, because that way we can create so much in so little time. Then its potential impact would mostly be economic, social, and environmental. Economic in the sense that the government saves a lot of money. Imagine that it spends $1 million on a kilometer of road. With this plan, it's surefire spending a lot less than $100,000, which means it's saving almost 90%. There's 90% decrease in the government spending per kilometer of road, and they're free to invest in other areas of the country, of the city. Shared value for communities because we're giving specific people who work in the city access into making a little bit more for themselves. They contribute as they contribute to how we operate, and we also pay them in return. Not to mention conservation efforts, because green technology is what is going to save the planet, as there are crises that are originating because we're not taking very good care of the planet as we know it, and this is just in line with that. We know Rwanda experienced economic growth since 2007, in part because of effective implementation of major infrastructure projects. We also see that as the urbanization increases, so does waste. So waste is likely to become something to start thinking about now. Also, new studies suggest that asphalt and other materials used in creating roads may actually be more toxic. They may actually be more toxic to the environment than that of cars, trucks. So this is definitely something to start thinking about. I mean, cons include, because this is like any other infant business or project, there's a sort of lack of clarity about the cost. You know, how much would it cost to create one brick? How many bottles go into one brick? How sustainable is it? And because the numbers are a bit fuzzy, it's difficult to tell what kind of success rate it would have exactly. But I don't think that's something that cannot be solved as time goes on and it advances. Okay, the other con is a major risk, which involves the government not really being interested in this technology. Because, for instance, since the government of Rwanda makes a lot from tourism, they might want to uphold conventional standards because this is what people coming to the country may want to see, may want to experience. So they may want to invest in that because it actually enhances their overall look for one of their major income sectors. But so far, it looks as though that may not totally be the case. For instance, with nail plast, with genje makers, with white thinkers from Ghana, Kenya, and Uganda, respectively, these are also people who create pavers and bricks from plastic. And they're doing well, and they're not just competition in a sense, but they're more of inspiration, a beacon of hope as to why we know this can succeed in our country. Thinking about it, I see that this could even go beyond just pavers, beyond just bricks. What if they could be used to build houses or animal shelters? or bridges, even bridges that float on water. And cultural flares means that people will be able to take these different bricks, take this invention, this innovations idea, and customize it to their own cultures. It could be involve adding a different kind of sand. It could involve painting it differently. It could involve writing on it, using it to tell stories, using it to be artistically relevant on their streets. It would also be used for molding furniture, stools, chairs, beds, tables, slabs, chopping boards. I mean, it could go into so many different ways, and all leading into a shift in mindsets where people begin to think, hmm, not just that we can create things by ourselves, but the government doesn't have to do everything for us. It's great that the government is there, but we can also contribute to our own well-being, to our own creations and how we fare. Who knows what sorts of innovations and ideas could come from just realizing that you have some power to invent, to create, to make something real, to ideate. Yeah. And I always say the road to success is paved with creative thinking. If I don't always say it, I have said it now. It's the road that takes us to a place where we don't have to be held back by financial constraints, where people care about their environment and how it is saved, where we build communities and advance the cohesion amongst neighborhoods and ultimately advance our societies, where all these three things are paramount. Therein lies the hopes of Operation 414.